What if every object had a secret? Now these pieces you're looking at were held and made by hands now long gone, yet they're still here, still speaking. Now I'm Kieran Hughes-Jones, I'm an antiques dealer. I run TaliesinAntiques.com, and that is a website where we celebrate the story behind every piece on there. You know, it's amazing. I get these pieces from car boot sales, forgotten collections, dusty auctions. Sometimes they're mislabelled, sometimes they're misunderstood, sometimes people just look at them and think they're so strange they're not interested. But they all share something in common, and that is that they have all survived, and all of them have a story that's probably never been heard before. So today's video is about these stunning antiques, their stories, and hopefully sparking your own fascination along the way. We're going to start today with these two amazing pieces of British pottery. These are historic and so important. Now, what if I told you that this beautiful blue and yellow glaze you see going across both vases here, it wasn't painted, it was grown, and they only had one chance to do it because if they got it wrong, the whole thing was ruined. So these are both pieces by Ruskin Pottery, both dated to 1930, so right at the start of that Art Deco era, which was all about geometry control. These, however, were all about risk, because the technique used to create these was a chemical reaction, and zinc was added to the firing, and then had to be fired very hot, then cooled just perfectly to allow these glazes to form. It made every piece unique, and if they got it wrong, they were absolutely destroyed. And this was the type of thing that made Ruskin pottery, and to this day, so highly in demand, and why people want to own these pieces. They're one-offs, they're rare, and they were just known for this experimental style of glazing. I'm going to put this one down carefully. I want to show you the base of this one, because this actually is even more special, because it's actually signed by the master potter of Ruskin at the time, William Howson Taylor. Now, Ruskin Pottery closed in 1935, and it's always been said that the reason behind that was because it was a very difficult time for the economy, and the only real way for potteries to make money, a lot of them anyway, was to go into mass production. And William Howson Taylor didn't want to do that. In fact, he preferred his pottery to close than to start using techniques which were not around, not individual, not creating this amazing style. He didn't want to go down that route, and he allowed the pottery to close. And because of that, these amazing pieces, one-off pieces, were preserved and remained highly in demand almost 100 years later. So these are special pieces. This is a chemical reaction, not an actual painting. And I find these absolutely amazing. They look incredible on the stand. And I actually found these in the car boot sale together, both of them. I mean, if you can get these things in car boot sales, why wouldn't you go? And these are now available on the Taliesin Antiques website. Now stick around to the end, because I'll do a list and a run through of how much I value each piece. So we're going to stay on that theme of historic British pottery, and I'm going to show you a piece from a little bit earlier. So have a look at this. I mean, it looks like it comes out of a dream or a nightmare, I guess. And this is dated to 1908. It was made by the Brannam pottery, which was part of a bigger tradition, the Barum potteries, and was made in Devon. So this one is signed and dated, signed on the bottom, as you can see there, by, I believe it's E.H. Brannam. So one of the part of the family, the founding family of this pottery. And what's interesting about that factory is that they started off with a lot of utilitarian ceramics, I believe drain pipes, for example, but then they would go on to create some of the boldest and most amazing pieces that you would find anywhere across British pottery, which was of course a lot, compared to how it is now, there was a lot more around at that point. What you have with this is this was created right in the middle of the Art Nouveau period. And the Art Nouveau period was around themes of flowing lines, around nature, but also the grotesque, as it was known. And what you have is themes from local folklore, and that's what's been created here in this beautiful, very vivid green colours. The green is actually, I'm not sure how I was capturing it, but I was putting some more photos in, but the greens are actually different shades of green, which I found really fascinating. So you've got these two dragons on either side, well, look like dragons anyway, certainly reptilian creatures with open jaws and those scales along the back. You've got these large fish motifs on the actual body. Very bold and very, this was made to stand out on the shelf. This was made for somebody who was, a little bit more, I suppose, hip at the time is probably the right way to describe it. Barum pottery was so popular, and they actually received a royal warrant eventually. So yeah, this is a fantastic find. What I find interesting about this was I found this on eBay and I snapped it up on the best offer. Described as Chinese. You could see why potentially with the the dragon handles, but this is as British as it gets. So an amazing find, and I love finding pieces like this, things that you can research the history of and learn the story behind why these were being made. And a great find, and now available on the Taliesin Antiques website. So now I have something which is a lot different, and this is one of those pieces that really does capture a moment in time. In fact, a moment in time 170 years ago, in the mid 19th century, and this was actually made in India, more specifically Kashmir. What's interesting though is that the scene that's being depicted here is more of a Persian theme, so modern day Iran. And what we're looking at is something that you might not associate a lot with Persian art, or maybe the Islamic cultures, which is a scene of two lovers. And you can see that they're not warriors, they're not scholars. This is just a scene of pure romance. In fact, there's that shisha by there, and there's vases. It's a very fascinating piece. Now, Persian art and culture, poetry especially, was highly influential across the Indian region, across that whole region from India up until right across the Middle East, and that was clearly shown in a lot of art during the period. So this is all hand hammered. Okay, it's using a steel stylus. There's no chasing or casting here. This is just hours and hours of work to create this beautiful image. So what's interesting about pieces like this is that a lot of them did come back with a lot of British colonial officers or people working in the colonies, because they would see this and they would just buy it, as a piece of decoration. But what it really is a memory of that time. That empire, of course, is long gone. Pieces like this remain, and it's a real privilege to find such things and such fascinating pieces with, really demonstrating a different culture, totally different to what we're used to here in the UK, certainly. So, a beautiful piece, and again, this was found at a car boot sale, just lying on the floor, on a blanket, amongst a load of other things. A special find, and again, very happy to be able to add that to my portfolio of beautiful things on my website. Now, doesn't this look industrial, rough, brutal? But this is actually designed with a very specific purpose in mind. It was made for something a lot rougher than just sitting happily in a house. No, this was made for the open sea. Now, this is a ship's kettle, dating to around 1900, very much in the art and craft era. And as you can see, it's got this flat base and this angular handle, this angular spout, and then we have the handle, which is designed perfectly for hand as well. So if you could imagine the rough seas, if you've got a normal kettle, that is spilling everywhere, it's going all over the place. This flat base and the spout going upwards like that meant it was a lot more likely that the liquids would stay inside. Now, if you imagine having hot liquids on the rough seas, that's a worrying thought, amongst all your other worries in that situation. So, as I mentioned, this is art and craft era, and the art and craft movement was a real push back against mass production, which had grown so much during the industrial era. So it's probably 1900 in date, around that sort of period. There's no clear way of knowing for sure, but it does meet all those markers. And look, you can see the patina, the verdigris. You've got these riveted handmade copper nails in there as well. This is very much of its period. And you know, it's worth pointing out, it's a nice discussion to have really, is that this has lasted over a century. You know, it doesn't look like, it's certainly in recent history, it hasn't had any polish, there's dents in it, it's lived its life. There's always this debate in the antique trade around, and it's similar to the copper charger I was showing you as well, is whether you should polish these pieces. And my opinion is it does depend. This, you have to keep it the same. This is really wearing its age. That is a beautiful patina across it. And look, right now, of course, you know, you're unlikely to go back on the sea with this one. This is just a beautiful decorative piece. You know, it wasn't made to be beautiful, but now these days it really does just have that appeal. All these lines and the history behind it, the reason it was made, just makes this a beautiful thing to put in a home and to share that story. Even in a modern home, this will fit in. And again, this was an amazing car boot sale find. It's one of those you can just spot it from a distance sitting there, and you have to go and check it out. Now available on the website, and I'm very happy to have it. So for the next one, we're going to play a little game of can you work out what this is for? Tiny little brass box with something very interesting inside. Now have a look at the pictures because it'll be a lot easier to see. I'll put them up on screen. Now it looks like a tiny little magnifying glass, or telescope rather. Maybe you'd think it's a tool for a gentleman, it goes in their pocket. All these things come to mind, but this actually wasn't for anything scientific. This was used for fabric. This is a linen improver or a thread counter, and it's made of brass, and this tiny little microscope fits perfectly inside this little box, easy to carry around and use. And it was made, as I say, for the textile industry, which was a lot larger and a lot more important back in the 1800s than it would be necessarily now. And more crucially, it was a tool that was essentially needed because a lot of things hadn't been designed that we would use today. So there wasn't bolts of cloth churned out, or quality had to be examined one thread at a time. And this little microscope was essential to that trade. So it's pocket size, made with precision. It's this amazing thing in the 1800s where they were really good at designing these little resolutions to problems, I guess, in this very intricate way. So this is it. I believe this one is a late 19th century example. It's it's a beautiful thing. I think I actually love pieces like this which were made for a very specific purpose and tell that story. You can actually probably still use it for a few things these days. I'll show you some photos where the microscope works perfectly to this day. So again, you guessed it, another car boot sale find. It just goes to show that even the little things are worth picking up, just for the stories they can tell. Okay, so here are two porcelain dishes, both from the 18th century, so both have a good deal of age to them. However, one of these is a Chinese export from the Qianlong period, around the 1750s, 1790s, and one of them is English. In fact, it was made by Coalport, and it was from the John Rose era towards the end of the 1700s. And they're the same palette, but there are little ways to tell the difference. So, what if I told you that the Chinese one was made of a hard paste porcelain, making it a bit more translucent, well, a lot more translucent. What if I told you that the English one was made of soft paste porcelain, which meant that it had a kind of creamier, warmer tone to it? Another thing to look for is the painting. Now, the Chinese one will be completely hand painted, and that will go right across the piece. And it'll have a kind of brown wash around the edges. Whereas the English one will be underglazed, transfer printed, and then it'll have touches up of painting and gilding on the outside. Another thing you can look at is the foot rims. Now, the Chinese example, that will be an unglazed foot rim with nice cutting edges. Whereas the English one will be slightly glazed a little bit rougher around where they would have used a traditional wheel. So how do you tell the difference then out of these two? Now the Chinese one, you're looking for fine walls, you're looking for that beautiful hand pasting translucency, whereas the English one will be a bit of a warmer, creamier tone. You'll see little hints of transfer printing and then the embellishments of painting over the top of it. Now, I probably gave it away with how I was looking then. I noticed as I was going along. Here we have the beautiful Chinese dish. Here we have the very nice as well English one. You know, it's very nice to find old pieces like this. They're neither in the perfect condition, but then they are very old now. They are going to have had knocks and scrapes. The fact is, look at them. They can display perfectly nicely. And yeah, the English one, of course, was a homage to the Chinese style. They were trying to replicate it. This is known as the banana tree pattern from, let's say, the John Rose era of Coalport, very early piece. And this is a traditional Chinese sort of, it's a river sort of scape, river/landscape, and it was made for export to Europe at the time when Chinese porcelain was all the craze. Again, these were of course found at the car boot sale, as I find so much my stuff. These two were actually in crates, were just out of crates. Of course, when you pull something out of a crate, generally you're going to get it for a good price. And yeah, very privileged to find things like this. Love finding that. And now both have been made available on my website. If someone wants to buy the two, come and let me know, and we can do a deal for the two, so you can see that, you can see the differences in these two pieces. How do you spot European pottery that's pretending to be Chinese? Now, this was especially common during the 18th and early 19th century because Chinese porcelain was coming over in shiploads and was very popular to the European taste, but it was very difficult for the European factories to imitate it, even after porcelain was discovered by Meissen, who were the first company to do it. So have a look at this piece here. Now this was sold to me as being a Chinese tea caddy. However, as you look at it closely, it's very clear this is a very European piece. In fact, this is Dutch Delft ware. It's a type of tin glazed pottery, so not porcelain at all. And it was made, it had a glaze which created this sort of milky, creamy finish, but was very much imitating the Chinese style. In fact, if you saw it maybe like this from a distance, you might think it was Chinese. I can see why the seller initially thought that. But when you start looking closely at the design, first you have this gentleman, very clearly an 18th century gentleman with his walking cane, and then you have the lady there, again, similar, well, same time period. This one has a nice dog actually, all hand painted still. But these are symbols of status from that period. Tea was very expensive, and people would buy things like this to store it. This initially probably had a silver lid or maybe a pewter lid, and this is not, it has a use, of course, for storing tea. However, this design on either side was there deliberately for status, and somebody who had this wanted to show off, wanted to prove that they were a high member in that society. And I find stories like this fascinating. It's almost like a ritual, has almost a ritual to it, and how in different time periods people did different things to elevate themselves or to really promote their social status. So the chance that there's no chance to it. This at some stage would have belonged to somebody who was probably quite wealthy. We're not talking huge landowner, lord, or royalty or anything, but someone who had a lot of money and wanted to make people aware, I can afford something like this. So yeah, I bought this on eBay. It's one that I didn't buy on the car boot sale. It was a best offer because, again, it was labelled as Chinese. And this is one of the few occasions when it comes to value, when actually the European version is as valuable or maybe more valuable than what the Chinese export version would be, because there are a lot of collectors who were fascinated by this time in European history. Certainly when it comes to Delft, where there's huge collections in Holland, and they're very proud of that tradition, so they should be. So that was a nice find. The fact it was labelled as Chinese did me a favour, and I was able to get a much better price. So I've got two final pieces to show you, And I suppose what's interesting about these is I bought them because I just liked the look of them. They had something about them, but I'm not totally sure the story behind them, I guess. I'm going to show you this painting first of all. You're seeing this is a very nice, the glass is blooming a little bit there, so I do apologise. Maybe if I just keep it like that, and I'll maybe show you a picture or two over the top. So it's just a very nice horse painting, simple as that. It's quite naively done, and it has a folk art style. So by folk art style, I mean it's probably not a trained artist. In fact, it's very certainly not a well-known or listed artist. It's signed by I. Jones 1967. It's an oil painting. It's talented, but yeah, I don't think this is one who was trained necessarily. This is probably an amateur artist or self-taught, I would have thought. Just a very nice image. And yeah, it's mid 20th century. If I show you the back, has all the aging you would expect. One downside for this is that the hanging wire there, and they did use a wire, has snapped off. So I do need to, in fact, I've used an old electrical wire, which is strange. But it's snapped, so all you have to fix that or sell it as is. And I can tell you the value now is that this will go up for £75. I bought this at a boot sale at a good price, and it's generally what you do see paintings like this around every now and again. It's a really pleasant image, and yeah, it's a good little find that was. Next, this is really interesting. Now initially I thought this was a piece of studio pottery. What you have here is a big cheese or butter dish. It's got the cow there on top. I mean, a lot of work's gone into this. I love the glaze. It's kind of that green, bluey drip glaze across it. It is actually signed WW on the bottom, so you can get that mark in there. Now I put this on a studio pottery group to help for advice. No one was able to confirm the mark or anything. I started to think this isn't British though. Initially I thought it was British studio pottery. I think this could be Belgium, maybe French. It's just got that. You do see similar glazes in a lot of the studio pottery over there. Now the value on this one is really difficult, entirely speculative really. You won't find many things like this. There's a small chip on the side which is superficial really. I don't know, I'm gonna have to really think about this. I'm thinking it might be around the same price as the horse painting, around £75. We'll see what happens. But what an amazing piece. If you've got, if you like that vintage style in your house and you like pieces to stand out and a little character, a little bit of fun, you're not going to see much better than that, are you? I absolutely love this. Happy to buy it. Right, so we're currently on the Taliesin Antiques.com homepage. I'm going to show you some of the valuations and how I arrived at the prices I'm asking for. I'll link up another video that I've done as well, which goes into more detail. But this is the homepage for anyone who hasn't seen. All categories that you can click on for easy navigation. You can search for items there as well. So we're going to start off with the Brannam vase. CH Brannam, if you recall this one. Now I'm asking £300 for that. It may seem like a high amount if you're not familiar with Brannam pottery, but here I'm on the eBay Terapeak page, and if you have an eBay shop, you can use this. It actually shows you sold listings from the last 3 years, and it's the actual prices they achieved. If you look on the eBay sold listings from that anyone can access, sometimes they're not telling you the actual price that was achieved, and they're just showing you what the asking price was when it sold. So anyway, here we are. So the highest amount Brannam vases achieved in the last 3 years is £778, a huge amount for the one I just showed there. If you look at this vase, very similar to one I have. It looks like it's probably similar in size. This one is better with the handles though. They are larger and a bit more detail. Similar colour though, and that achieved £517. Another similar one here, similar colours again, maybe a bit larger, and that one achieved £363.91. So there we go, that's how I arrived at that price. Next we'll have a look at the Ruskin Pottery vases. You remember these ones here with the crystalline glazing. This trumpet vase particularly good, as it is signed by the master at the time, Mr. William Howson Taylor. And then we have this one here, which is more of a cylindrical shape, not signed by William Howson Taylor, but still dated 1930 and all done correctly. And if we have, well, I say done correctly, all signed up correctly, here we have the Ruskin Pottery. Results from the last 3 years on eBay, £887, the highest one gone for, and that's this one here. Makes you think, doesn't it, seeing that one there? Because a lot of people would walk past that if in the market or boot sale. But yeah, you can see the prices the Ruskin Pottery does achieve. I didn't say actually, this one I'm asking £250 for, the other £150, and we'll go back. Here we go. So we have, I just wanted to find some vases which have a similar glaze to the ones I have. Here's one here. Four-handled vase, very nice, that one, very similar. £332 achieved, and then this other one here, similar again, that achieved £331. So as you can see how I arrived at my pricing. Next we're moving on to this beautiful Kashmiri copper charger with the Persian theme, and I'm asking £175 for that. I think the size, the subject matter, just the work that's got into it justifies that price on its own. Up to the buyer if they want to polish this up, and if you polished it, yes, you probably would be able to see the scene a lot clearer. It's a bit dull from all the years patina, but that's also part of its charm in my opinion. Moving on to the Art and Crafts copper ship's kettle, I'm asking £75 for that one, based on the research, and I think it's a beautiful design piece. Now this one is the Delft tea caddy, and as you can see there, and just so you know, I do loads of photos for my listings, give a full history and a story, talk about condition, make it really easy for you as a buyer to see what you're getting, and everything I sell is shipped worldwide, so everyone has a chance to own these. Now this one, I actually found a auction, and there's a few of these I've sold in auction if you looked them up, but this one sold a few years ago now, but this one achieved $600, and that was back in 2018. $600 being about £500, just off the top of my head. I think that's about right. It might be even a bit more than that. This one did have a lid as well, and as you can see, I'm asking $225 for mine. Final two we'll look at is this Qinglong plate, so 18th century Chinese porcelain, and I'm asking £75 for that. And then the cheapest one of the lot is the Coalport late 18th century banana tree pattern plate. Now there's a bit of damage with, for example, a bit of a hairline that runs along the back, but just £20, and really that is just a reflection of what British porcelain from that period is making these days. So there we go, that's everything. Go and have a look at the website to have a look at a lot more listings, and yeah, I'll put links to all these pieces on the description as well. Okay, that's the full video today. Thank you so much for watching. Everything you saw today you will see on my website, which is taliesinantiques.com, and you'll find hundreds of other pieces with a full story behind them, the full history. So head over there if you're interested in antiques and interesting things. And if you are interested, as I say, in antiques and interesting things, also stick around on this channel. Please subscribe to it, click that button, click the like button and the comment button as well, and let me know what you think, what your favorite pieces were. These all help me grow this channel and help me to keep creating these videos. And that is it today. Until the next time, hopefully you found them interesting, and look, you have to go out there and look for these things because they're everywhere. I find everything I do mainly in South Wales, in the local area. I get a few things off eBay, but mainly it's car boot sales that you found out today. So everyone will have them local to you. Wherever you are in the world, there'll be markets and people selling things. So it's always worth getting out there and just seeing what you can find, because it's absolutely amazing. So I won't go on any further. I appreciate you watching today, and I wish you all the best. See you again soon. Take care.